All right, perfect. All right.
All good?
Yeah. So whenever you guys are ready.
So, hi everybody. I'm Brian. I'm with Key Code Media. This is James. He's with Bryce Lake. Can you hear me a little better now? Yeah, I can. And this is our buddy Dan, who's a engineer at JVC. This breakout session is about live streaming and getting graphics into your production while live streaming. So we've brought along one of JVC's sports cameras, which can do a bunch of the graphics, on the fly and things like that. So we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of show you guys a little bit of how it's done and with an actual camera. And Dan has his camera on his side, so he can show you some things about the camera, talk about how they do the graphics, and how the camera is being used today by different people in the production world. So with that, Dan, how you doing?
I'm good. How is everybody?
Good. We're having a
Good. So just real quick, I'm Dan Skirpan. I'm with JVC. I'm the director of sports. I actually been with JVC for around 6 years. I actually helped develop the 500 camera. So I am definitely drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to this camera, specifically the 500 SPC, the one that you guys have in front of you right now. It is built pretty much on the same chipset as our big 900 camera, shoulder camera, but obviously in the handheld world. It's a 1-inch chip sensor, but besides the camera, it's way more than a camera. It's an all-in-one package for a single camera streaming capabilities. It has the one touch to Facebook. What that truly means is once you set it up, you can actually log into Facebook on the camera itself, and you can actually hit the one button on the side of the camera and you can go live just like you do on your iPhone or your iPad. It also has the same effect with YouTube. So it has those two big features. Those are pretty much the two largest streaming portions of it to make your life a lot easier when it goes to YouTube and Facebook. But it also does stream to the other platforms as well, because it has RTMP, RTMP-S, it has SRT, SRT is pretty awesome because you can stream it back to your switcher that's in-house, so you don't have to take your production, complete production studio with you. Like if you have a vMix box or if you have a TriCaster or something like that, where you can actually do an SRT feed, which is makes your life a lot easier. So you can just send your camera guys and your talent. Something else that's built into the camera is that you can receive video back on the remote side of it with return video through the SDI. It's an SRT stream or a UDP stream, whatever your output of your switcher is. And what's really cool about that is that if you are doing a football game or a baseball game or any sporting event, really, you can actually put a monitor in front of your commentary and you can actually send them replay so they can actually talk about replay to give you your full production background. It also has IFB built into the camera. So if you want to, you can actually talk to the talent back. He can't talk back to you just because it's IFB, but you can actually give him directions on when you're going to do some of the airing. So something else that's awesome about the 500 SPC, now it's only the SPC, has the sports coaching software, and it also has the coaching, the graphics, the streaming graphics that are built into it. It's probably going to be a little hard for me to show this, but I'm going to attempt to show this to you. Let's see here. So if I want to share my screen, I want to show this. Click share. So I believe everybody should be able to see the GUI interface of the camera. With all of our streaming cameras, you get the web GUI interface. What you can do is, as long as you know the IP address of the camera, you can physically log into it. So it gives you the full capability of an RCP panel, but sitting at home instead of sitting out in the field. But what I really want to talk to you about is the overlay. So I'm going to, hopefully you guys can see the screen. This gives you like a confidence monitor so you can see what the other person is seeing. And again, you have your control, you can record, But what I wanted to show you is this. So I believe I should be able to hit this. So if I go back to the camera control, now you guys can see the graphics that are on the bottom of the camera. Like, you can control it two different ways. One is through the web GUI interface, or if you have a sportscast or a sports score hub that is connected to this in the facility, you can actually, all this information will be automatically updated. So again, what is different about the SBC is that the SBC has the sports coaching graphics built into it. You can do, right now I have it set for football. I don't know if I can show you the menu. Does the menu, oh, the menu did come up. So you can do it a couple different ways. So if you scroll down, so these are your overlay settings. What you're going to notice is these are the ones that are standard with the camera. Basketball, baseball, type 2, type 1. The type 2 and the type 1 are just generic scoreboards where, like, if you have like lacrosse or wrestling or volleyball that really doesn't need the clock, but it has like the goal and things like that, you can use type 1 or type 2. But there's also a custom graphic, it's called STP generator, and it'll give you hockey and it'll give you soccer as well. So if you want something else that's special, you can do that. But I picked football. So football looks like this. And then if you go to the overlay, that's what your overlay will look like in the web GUI interface. If I change the sport to baseball, so you'll notice that, let me get the menu button, you'll notice that the graphic has changed. But what's also has changed is your overlay control has also changed. So it's just another easier way to actually just update the games. And then if you go back to my graphics, see if you notice all the balls showed up. So let's see here, what else? So we can take that off, go back to control, go back to menu. Yeah, oops. Sorry, I'm doing this. And then something else that's actually pretty awesome. If you wanted to record and stream the graphics, you can. If you don't want to record the graphics, this is where you would turn it off here, where you can turn off the graphics output. By doing this, you can actually have a clean feed of a recording without the graphics. Or if you're trying to send it to somewhere else, you can send, like if somebody else needs a feed, you can give them the HDMI feed, and you can turn off the overlay feed as well. You can just give them a clean feed. So this is the Sportscast interface. So what's nice about this is that if you have the camera hooked up to the network, the same network that the Sportscast is on, it will automatically detect. You can actually just do a search for local server, and it'll automatically find the scorebot. And when it finds the scorebot, it gives you like a bunch of prompts, and you just click OK all the way through it, and it'll give you the full access to the controller. That way, it turns it into automatic. Something else is awesome. Let's see here. So the other thing is here is that if you wanted to, and it's called an STP generator. You can create an entire season in this software, and this is where you would import it. You can create your own little logos, your names. Instead of if you don't want to give it a little bit of customization, you can do that, and that's where you do it. You would do it here under the import user layout. Something else is pretty cool. Let's see here. I'm not sure if this will do it. So we also have something that's called the broadcast feature. So if you're not doing a sporting event, you can actually do broadcast layouts. So what's nice about this, it gives you the best of both worlds. If you buy a 500U camera, the 500U gives you the broadcast graphics, but not the sports. But this camera will give you the sports and the broadcast logos. What's nice about this is that you get the live feature up top. You can do a logo. You can do your lower thirds, top thirds, and lower thirds. You can also do a watermark, the watermark as well. What's nice about that is that you can turn it on, turn it off, however you please. So let's see here. Yep, so that takes care of that. But again, it's something pretty cool that it does give you the broadcast logo in case you guys are like on the borderline whether or not if you need the sports software or not. You can still get the broadcast. Let's see here. Let's go back in the network. Overlay settings. I just want to turn off the broadcast portion. Put it back to sports. So that's the down and dirty on the sports or the graphics. Something else the camera does, it can record in 4K uncompressed. It's 422 uncompressed, but it records to a solid state drive. That it's an added option to the side of it. You can also stream HEVC with our HEVC encoders. That also is another added option that slides into the USB slot that's on the side of the camera. Besides that, I mean, that's pretty much the main overview. The difference with the 500 SPC. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like me to show? Maybe I went a little too fast.
Is anybody doing some sports at their station?
I have a question. Yeah. How are you able to, would you have to have a web interface to kind of update those in real time, or are you able to do that on the camera?
So it's when you have to be logged into the camera on a computer or a cell phone or an iPad. You can do it peer-to-peer or through a network, and the web GUI interface is built in, like this GUI interface is built into the camera.
Okay.
It's not an app or anything like that.
Got it.
Anybody have any other questions, or anybody, what are you guys doing for your streaming right now? Is it just something that you're kind of doing mostly after the fact, or is there, did you guys find this pretty interesting? We thought that the camera was kind of a unique and at a pretty unique price point for all the different things that it does, you know, the ability to go into the scoreboard and those kind of things. Anybody have any more questions?
Yeah, well, we stream live with a multi-camera setup, so how would the graphics reflect when you're cutting between cameras? Are they tied to one camera, or do they link to a group?
I didn't hear the question. I apologize.
How do the graphics reflect between multiple cameras when you're cutting live with like a multi-camera setup?
So if you're doing a multi-camera setup, the camera, they don't tie to each other. But if you had, like, again, two 500 SBCs and a scorebot graphic, it would be seamless. You wouldn't notice the difference. But if you're doing it manually with a multi-camera shoot, then you're going to notice the difference. But to be honest, if you're doing a multi-camera shoot, you're not going to use the graphics that are in the camera anyways. Just because you're going to be using a switcher that I would assume has graphics.
Yeah.
What's the price point of the camera?
I think it,
Price point
is
all the options.
sub 5.
Yeah, mic's not working because we only got one plugged in right now.
Hello. This one is. Dan, did you get it? What is the price point on that? What's the MSRP?
Yeah, the MSRP is around $4,500 on the SPC.
So it's probably, yeah, sub 4 by the time it.
That's valid. Yep.
You guys ask what how the iris is as you zoom in and you start losing light.
How's the iris when you zoom in? You just start to lose some of the, you know, resolution and.
No, I mean the iris is. I'd say I want to say no, just because of the 1-inch chip sensor that's built into it. I've never really noticed anything different. The only thing I would say about the camera is there's probably too many settings that are on the camera, because you can manipulate it to do anything you really want it to do, whatever you're more comfortable with doing. But the cameras are being used. To be honest, they're being used all over the place right now. The Power 5s are using them, all the NCAAs. It's ESPN3 ready with the 40 by zoom lens in HD. I'm trying to think, but like a ton of conferences are using them now. We do have some high school sports that are using it. They're using it specifically for the Zoom and for the graphics, along with being able to do coaches video. Like it can upload to Huddle or wherever they want it to go.
Oh,
So they kind of killed two birds with one stone.
so they kind of use it down on the field as well as, you know, for coaches training and.
Exactly. Most of the time, it's used like on the 50-yard line, on the sideline ends up like the sideline view, because the angle is so wide on the camera lens and you can zoom in tight. But again, for streaming purposes, it's rock solid.
Awesome. Anybody have any other questions? All right. Well, Dan, we appreciate it. Thanks so much for making yourself available. And,
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, if there's anything else you guys need, just let me know. I'm here to help.
Yeah, and let any of us know. So what's next?
Me.
All
I'm
right.
going to show some examples of the graphics that I use.
Okay, do we disconnect? Dan, thanks so much. I'll reach out to you, okay?
Absolutely. Sounds good. Take care.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Dan.
See ya. See you guys.
Jim's next up. He's going to talk over some.
Who?
James.
Thank you.
Go over some graphics, you know, how he's using them.
All right. Let's see. Let's get rid of that. Or try to. That's not what I want. There. Let's start at a good spot, which usually is the beginning. Okay. So if you were in the last presentation that I did a little while ago, you know that I'm the director at Rice Lake Community Media. I am more or less a one-man band. So when I go out with some help now, so when I go out and do basketball or football, which I'm going to show you a couple of examples of graphics that I use, sometimes I'll have some help and sometimes I won't. There's a game in here that I'll show you that I ended up doing camera, graphics, stats, announcing, and kind of a little bit of everything by myself, which ended up being in a triple overtime game. So I've discovered that isn't going to happen again. Something will fall off the end of the cliff before I do that again. But I wanted to show some samples of some graphic suites that I use. As a matter of fact, this one is called Suite, S-U-I-T-E, capital C, capital G, Suite CG. And it allows for importing logos, and this is all templated right within the system. And you can put in where it says WIA Regional, that is a little thing that, a little bar that pops up. When we get into the game itself, the logo shows up, the bars for timeouts show up, scores. When the score changes, much like what you would see on a ESPN game or a CBS game or something like that, a little gold flashes and the number changes. This bar can change to have whatever information on it that you want. It'll show the quarter, period, whatever determination it is that the sport you're in. In this case, basketball shows the possession arrow, who has it, and then of course the countdown clock. In this particular case, I was running it manually, so when the play was going on, click start. When the play was done, click end. This particular CG suite will also do it in tenths of seconds at the end of each quarter, which is unique and monstrously difficult in order to maintain an accurate number between what the actual gym scoreboard says and what mine says. It's got several little pop-up stats boxes that will show. In this particular case, it shows the number of points scored in the first half, second half, overtime, second overtime, and eventually what turned into a third overtime. So that's Sweet CG. This is how we did football this year. And this is off of Live Text, which is based on NewTek's TriCaster. So I run for this particular season, I ran a TriCaster TC Mini SDI with Live Text coming in by data. And then the graphics itself is from a gentleman by the name of Chris Gurrad, Gurrad. And he designed several different sports templates for scoring. The clock inset was just another small Canon XA20 where I just kind of cropped out the clock from the stadium scoreboard and put it in so I didn't have to worry about start the clock, stop the clock, start the clock, start the clock. You can with this software do that, but I found it easier to just have a camera aimed at the scoreboard because that made life a lot easier. Within Live Text, you can also create full bugs, corner graphics. So this is what we showed at the end. Well, it says second, but it's at the end of the first quarter going into the second quarter. So Rice Lake Community Media, our channel numbers, radio station, and then the scores are actually tied in to the bar. So when the bar updates the scores, this bug score changes by itself. So that was pretty handy. There's an example of using the built-in clock instead of the cropped-in clock from another camera. So Sweet CG is that first one with the more colorful graphics, and it's subscription-based. You can pay for it for a month at a time, 3 months at a time, I think 6 months at a time, or a year at a time. And their customer service is fantastic. I had troubles when I first started using it for basketball, and I called him or emailed him, and we went back and forth like 10 times, and all of it was useful stuff. Live Text, as I mentioned, part of NewTek TriCaster. It's an add-on to the TriCaster line, and you are able to do enormous things with it. I have not used this personally, but I know of New Blue FX. It's kind of a higher end graphic system, and it can be part of the broadcast pick setup. So if you have that for your remote production, you can add in a full entity, I guess we'll call it, of New Blue FX, and those have some pretty amazing capabilities as well. I am going to turn this little white microphone now over to Mr. Luckett, and he's going to talk about a couple of other graphics capabilities from different companies.
All right.
Maybe I shouldn't put that in front of a speaker,
Probably
because
not.
I should know better than that.
All right, mine's probably going to be a little brief. I was recruited within a short time of our lovely little conference here. So there's a couple different things that I like to do. I mean, obviously a lot of us work with TriCasters. Raise your hand if you use a TriCaster. Okay. Does everybody stream on YouTube? Raise your hand if you do.
No.
Okay, so not everybody. Well, that's because you he's got his opinions about it. And then, let's see, is my computer coming through? Good. So let's see, what did I ask? Oh, what about OBS? Anybody use OBS? Only a couple people? Well, I did a test the other day. Interesting, this is kind of showing a different view of my screen. But I ended up installing vMix on this computer and ended up hooking it up to an NDI input. So anybody uses NDI cameras, raise your hand, like PTZ optics and stuff like that. So you can use a network-based camera, be able to control it all within the computer. So I hooked up our NDI cameras up to vMix running on this very robust computer here, and it stuttered for me. I ended up using OBS as a different option, and it worked out really well. And I was surprised it actually ended up recording pretty good. Yesterday I ended up even doing a stream to YouTube just to make sure it worked. But going on the cheap, this is just another example. So you got doing it in the camera. From here, while I was sitting here, I ended up creating an open, if this thing will play, an open for, well, I have this existing open for League of Women Voters, and I don't know why this thing is not showing up here. This is just horrible. And here we go. See it now? Hey! So we had done I'm going to see if I can get a better screen in here. We had done a candidates debate at one point in time. And the candidates debate had to be done virtually. So we had everybody coming in on Teams. So actually I ended up using one of my, this is not showing it right, but let's see if I can just make it a little smaller here. So I ended up actually using vMix to be able to pull it off. But you can do the same thing with OBS, and I'm using basically the same templates here. So, for example, where did my microphone go? I got it? Oh, here it is. Want to be able to be heard. So, if anybody hasn't used OBS, that would be one recommendation. You can bring your cameras in. You could probably use like Blackmagic Atom. So I don't know if anybody's been using the new little mini mixer. So you use that as a source coming in. Right now, obviously you see it happening here. With vMix, I found that I ended up using Blackmagic cards to be able to capture the different sources coming in, other than going with NDI cameras. I think the beauty with NDI, if you can afford them at $2,000 a piece, you can completely control them, as well as send your audio and your video signal coming from that camera into sources. One thing to keep in mind though, and this is I'm trying to think of how do you do it in the field. And I've done some broadcasts in the field where I have a Panasonic camera. It can transmit with a little thumb device, transmitter, to any kind of hub. So I bring like an AT&T little hub device that would allow me to boost my signal going out. I forget what they call them. Mental block. The hotspot, there you go. So just using a hotspot, and that really worked for me. And it was just a matter of, well, I had to make sure that in my YouTube settings, I had it set for auto start and auto stop. So that way, as soon as I hit go, the camera understands it. That takes a lot of pre-programming within the camera here in order to pull that off. With regards to this, I mean, you could have this laptop, and as long as the laptop has a wireless signal in the area that you're at, or if you have a hotspot, you could use this with the OBS being able to send the signal out and have this kind of control your source as well. So that way you're not tied to one specific camera. You could use other cameras in the switch. If you use like something like a Blackmagic switcher product. So this is one option here. I ended up basically just making different titles, and I put them in a scene called titles. And I wish this thing would be a little better looking. If I unplug it and plug it back in, will it work better? Should we give it a go?
I think Jeff was having the same problem.
All right.
Compressed.
So what I ended up doing is I made one screen or one particular scene and called it titles. And so I created all the titles that I wanted and kind of stuck them in there. That way, what I can do is then just basically copy each one and then paste it into a scene, another scene. Now these different scenes, each one is kind of driven by layers of stuff. So this one's the camera pointing at me, and obviously you can't see it because this is in the way. This next layer here, if you can kind of see it down here, and each time I click it, it says a different scene. Now I got a thing in here that says league, and that's a video that I can play. And then I got an overlay, which is this thing here, which is just a PNG with it being transparent in the middle. And then on top of it, I can put different text. In order to pull in the text, what I would do is I just copy and paste from my titles so that I have some kind of reference. But I need to make sure that each scene is kind of its own switched entity. So if we're just doing a talking heads type of thing, this works out really well. But this is going on the free, cheap type of end for production. If you want to go with something like a vMix, if you've used vMix, I built the machine because PTZ Optics supposedly wasn't compatible with my TriCaster at the time, and this is several years ago. So I bought a couple PTZ cameras, and then it was like, okay, they don't work. So I had some leftover funding. I ended up building a vMix machine, and about 2 months later, all of a sudden the firmware was there, and they would work with my TriCaster, but I had already built the machine. But I really like the vMix machine. I use it for a lot of stuff in the library where I work. Just to kind of give you an example of this is one thing that was done live on vMix. So I would just end up and we, obviously it's a standalone, like, desktop you'd want to build for something like this. I haven't had good luck using vMix on something portable like this. But a lot of the same principles that are available in OBS are also available in vMix. But I ended up plugging in, okay, there's your standard image at the beginning that plays, and then I created a roll-in that would play our intro to the program. So we get a little faster here. So then it would play that, and then since I'm doing this as a Teams with people that are remotely, I'm talking to them through the computer that I'm using to host Teams that's plugged into the vMix device that I'm switching with. But I just basically created a border to kind of hide the Teams thing and then put the titles over the top. And I did notice during the production that I spelled something wrong. So fortunately enough, while it's switching, you can still go in there and end up doing some, look at that, we've got a black screen. Proof that things go weird. So I could put in different titles. Each one was a layer upon a layer. And you can do layers upon layers within OBS as well. And like I said, right here, I ended up creating this. If I wanted to add the Allen Rocks title to it, it's pretty much just do like a copy and paste it into this other program here, and then boom, I can resize it and move it around and make it part of the production, and then it's just a matter of hitting the transition, then it becomes that live event. So that way you can switch between the different sources. I'd say the more pre-production you can end up doing, the easier it'll be for pushing out your content. But yeah, a free program using this existing laptop tends to kind of do it pretty well for this type of a situation. I mean, these are other options than choosing going with a TriCaster. I know that for me, when I've done sporting events with the TriCaster, I usually had one person who just did titles, and they were just changing the scoreboard, and then I had somebody else doing the directing and switching with the camera operators. And that's kind of how we ended up doing it. But yeah, with this, you can do it in layers. Like I said, vMix is kind of when it comes to a laptop type based computer for doing your stuff, but OBS is kind of the easy way in, especially if you just want to be able to get into doing some live streamed events. Yes?
Is that OBS Studio? Is that the one that you loaded?
Yeah, this one is OBS Studio. It's a 64-bit program. It's the free one that's out there. If you are going to do something where there's, I don't know if any of you have seen the other Media Fest where we did them virtually. I ended up controlling that, and that was pretty tricky. I had a couple monitors up, and I was using OBS for that. And I had one monitor that was pretty much just on me, so as I did the introduction, and then I had another frame, a border set up because you can resize these things to fit. I had one set up over the Media Fest itself, and then I also had a Zoom meeting open that all of you were invited to. And then as you were an award winner and got a chance to speak, I would just do a frame grab, or make you the primary pinned in image, and then that was another channel, and it was all done in OBS as different scenes, and so I could just jump in between the different sources and switch between them, and then I was pushing that one out. In order to pull it off with my voice being in the broadcast, there was a little plug-in that you have to do that is like an audio bridge to work with OBS in order for it all to work together so that you can hear it and it's made available. Because I know even with using something like Teams and putting that into vMix, obviously me talking to the people that are in the Teams meeting, my voice isn't getting amplified into the mix, only to the people that are seeing it at home. But if I wanted to, I could plug it into another audio source coming in. One other thing to keep in mind, you can add a lot of different sources to this, so I'm just going to hit plus here. And, well, actually, I want to go with this here down here instead. Cancel. I use like a USB audio interface. So you got audio input capture. If anybody's familiar with like PreSonus, there's different audio capture devices that you can use. So Focusrite's a really nice quality one if you wanted to go in that direction. The sound system that I'm using for the main stage, that's our mixer. It's a Behringer XR18. That will also, that's got a USB out, so I can plug that in here if I wanted to as an audio source, and it could just be a stereo audio source. When I'm using that device, I'm usually using my MacBook and I'm recording multiple channels of audio because I'm kind of a nut when it comes to doing multiple microphone feeds. So that's another way of getting your better audio coming in if you don't want to rely on a camera. But the other day I ended up doing an event where we ended up using just a stupid little $500, $600 camera, had a wireless mic plugged into it, and then we actually embedded the audio back to our TriCaster, and that ended up with a pretty good audio source. We kind of controlled the sound from the wireless transmitter that we're using hooked up to a sound system, because I found that plugging directly into a sound system can sometimes bring in some buzzing and noise, whereas if you can go into a wireless world just to transmit a short distance, you can actually keep your audio pretty clean. I know that I sound a little chaotic, but hopefully you got something from this. Are there any other questions? Because I think we're 4:15 when this thing ends, right? So, yeah, if you want to know more about audio, which tends to be one of my favorite subject matters, we're going to be talking about it in the morning, and I'll kind of gloss over some different ways of capturing things. Boyce Johnson will be kind of covering if it was a press conference, where you would tap in and doing that kind of stuff. I'll talk about more of like the capturing good concert material, what kind of microphones you would use in that instance. I pretty much like to use a Zoom recorder for my audio interface, and you can use that as well as a USB interface into some of these devices, and actually use that as like kind of a mini mixer coming in here. So, but yeah, you can still do a good job with the audio on these. You can still use your XLR input in, bring it in here, and then bring it into something like OBS and shoot it out and be able to mix it, take it from a stereo feed into a mono mix and choose one channel over the other and blend them nicely. So those are some other options to improve your live streams. So that's all I got. Thanks. Thanks, James.
If you could fill out the orange sheets again for us, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, when it comes to graphics though with OBS, there's a lot of stuff online that can show you how to really spice them up.